It's page Ches, line 20. And we were speaking about how the Yitzias Mitzrayim is a preparation, or the Yitzias Mitzrayim is a preparation for Matan Torah, and part of that aspect of Yitzias Mitzrayim is also the level of our crossing of the Yam Suf, and that's why it was necessary to have this amazing miracle about the Yam Suf, even though the actual saving of the Yidden from the Mitzrim did not need to have the crossing of the Yam Suf. And we said also that the splitting of the Yam Suf is also something that has to be remembered, just like Yitzias Mitzrayim has to be remembered always, and just like Yitzias Mitzrayim, which is remembered always, is something that occurs in a way of that by remembering it recurs again. The same thing by Kriyas Yam Suf, whatever it stands for recurs again. So you said, what is Yitzias Mitzrayim's preparation for Matan Torah? Matan Torah is about the revelation of the highest coming down here below. It's the level, the most concealed level, the most hidden level, came down here below into this world, and the preparation for that was also the splitting of the Yam. The Yam, as we will talk about at greater length soon, shows on concealment. And when Hashem turned over the sea to dry land, and even not just the sea that the Yidden crossed, but all the waters in the world, Hashem split. That means, that indicated that all the concealments, all the coverings that were there throughout Seder Ishtalshlus was also opened up so that it should be able to be the precursor for the revelation that will take place by Matan Torah. Now he's going to go into more detail about what needed to change, what needed to go on to a higher level for Matan Torah. So he says in line 20 again, on page Ches, 1, 2, 3, 4, I think it's the fourth page from the printouts. He says, with Pratis Yoser, more specifically, the preparation of the for Matan Torah has to be in two aspects and in two components, which are one of them is Hachanas Ha'olam, the preparing of the world. That means the preparation in the particular place that Matan Torah is taking place in. In other words, Matan Torah is here in this world, and in this world we are making and giving, and the Torah is being given. So this world has to be a place that's prepared for it, that's ready for it, that's able to receive the Torah. And Liyas Hagilu the Matan Torah should be the revelation of Matan Torah. The world should be able to receive it. The place, which is this world, should be an appropriate place, and that's worthy of being a home for Hashem. How does that take place? How do we make sure that the world is ready? Through refining the coarseness of the world. Lasses me'achomriyas gashmiyas, to transform the coarseness of the world and to turn it into the physical. Ad she'yiroi l'matan Torah, till the world will be worthy and ready for the giving of the Torah. Kashiyakaima, by mitzvah, that when we fulfill a mitzvah in this world, lo yiyas derach b'derach ma'ivir, it should not just be done in a way that it's just passing through. Ela yifal, top of page test, Ela yifal shinui v'yishar by bakviyas chulum, that when we use something of this world to fulfill a mitzvah, it's going to affect a change in the item, and it will remain that change in a set way, like we make tefillin and mezuzahs and things like that. These are items of mitzvah that the item itself now is transformed into a holy thing. Second idea, another preparation has to be, so he says in line 2, Vasheni hachonas ha'odam b'nei Yisrael she'oises ha'olam dir lo yizbarach ha'idei kiyum ha'torah mitzvahs. There needs to be a preparation that the Yidden, that they are the ones that are doing and making a home for Hashem down here below through fulfillment of Torah mitzvahs. So they also need to be prepared and ready for this event of Matan Torah. They need to be able to do this. Similar to what's explained in a different place, that when there is a union of light and vessel, there needs to be both the light needs to be prepared and made in a state that it can come down into the vessel, and the vessel needs to be prepared and made in a state that it could receive the light. A simple example, a teacher that's teaching a student, a Rav and a Talmud. So there is the idea, the light, the way it's in the Rav's mind, it needs to be prepared and toned down and made available to the level that the student should be able to receive it. The same way, the student needs to focus his mind, needs to train his mind, needs to elevate his mind to receive the ideas of the Rav. So that's preparation both from the perspective of the Oir and the preparation from the Keli. So in a similar vein, there is the world that is receiving the Oir of the key of the mitzvah, and there's the Yidden that are making the world into a Dir Lo Yizbarach Tachtonim. Both of them need to go through a preparation to be ready for Matan Torah. Line 5. The refinement of the world was through the iron smelter of Mitzrayim, just like a smelter, an iron furnace, is there to be able to remove impurities from metals. Similar vein was the idea of Mitzrayim. Through the difficult enslavement with the mortar and the bricks, Yidden were refined. So what does that have to do with the world? When the Yidden became refined, so the enslavement in Mitzrayim caused a refinement as well in the world. Because the entire world is dependent upon the Yidden. So it's a very interesting thing that you would think that the world needs to be refined. Why drag us into it? But it's an amazing point that the Yidden had to chas v'shalom suffer in Mitzrayim so that the world should be able to become refined. Yes, they also became refined, but they were an instrument, an assistance that the world should become refined. Like it says in the Pasuk, Gamas Oilam Nasim Balibam, where do we see that the world is dependent upon the Yidden? Like it says, also the world He placed in their hearts. In other words, by what happens to the Yidden, that impacts the world as well. This is what it says in the Pasuk, I appeared to Avram, Yitzchak, and Yankov, Ushmi Havayla Nadaitilahem, my name Yudke Vovke, I did not make known to them. Meaning, though by the Avis there was also a revelation of godliness. It says, I appeared to the Avis. So there was an appearance of God, a revelation of godliness. Still in all, despite that revelation, since this revelation of Hashem to the Avis, to the forefathers, was before the Golus Mitzrayim, the exile Mitzrayim, therefore my name Avaya I did not make known to them. And like Rashi explains, what does it mean? I did not make known my name Havaya. I did not become recognized to them by my attribute of truth. But only through the refinement of the exile Mitzrayim, Kura Barzel, the iron smelter, the iron furnace, could be the revelation of Yudke Vavke. So therefore the world had to be prepared, and the world was prepared when the Yidden had gone through the servitude in Mitzrayim. But Noisuf Lazar says in line 18, in addition to the preparation of the world that we mentioned before. There's another preparation that has to be. Tzadikli is gama chana b'neshamas Yisrael. There also has to be a preparation in the neshamas of Yidden. Laharis lahem extra yochel is inin shagilei helam, to show the Yidden how there could also be a revelation of the concealed levels. Like we said before, the Matan Torah. We spoke about yesterday, the most concealed levels to the utmost concealments came revealed down here. So we have to show them and demonstrate to them how this takes place. This occurred through Kriyas Yamsuf. So Yitzias Mitzrayim, so Mitzrayim prepared the world. And the splitting of the sea prepared the Yidden to show them there could be this revelation from above. The Yidden were shown how in this physical world they transformed the sea to dry land. That the Yidden went through in dry land within the sea. That in the dry land, as it is dry land, in other words, in the levels of revelation, came down, became revealed in a revealed way, the level of the sea, which is the most concealed levels of above. Top of page Yud, Ois Dalet. The explanation of this matter is the hafach of transforming the sea to the dry land. Yuvim behegnim klaus achiluk. The Yam Yabash will be understood by first explaining the general difference between sea and dry land. Anything that there's to be found in dry land, there's to be found in sea. Rather, but the creatures of the sea are concealed and covered under and within the waters of the sea. That the waters of the sea covers them from all sides. This means they're completely nullified to the source of their life, which is the sea. As we know, the sea is considered the life source of the fish. As soon as the sea creatures, the fish, leave the ocean, they will die. That's how we see that its entire life force is dependent and comes from the sea. Va'ad, to such a degree, shekol mitziusam heim mehayam. Their entire being is the seawater, not just their life. Life is like the difference when we say there's the life of the world and the actual existence, the actual material of the world. Same thing. There's the fact that the fish are alive, and then there's the very body of the fish itself. So we find that the very mitzias, the very body of the fish itself, is part and parcel of the sea. That according to the opinion of Rabbi Gamliel, anything that is a sea creature that's created within the sea, is not considered a blockage for tvila. If a sea creature somehow gets stuck to the person, so it's not considered a chatzitza, it's not considered something that invalidates the immersion in the mikveh, let's say if that's the sea. Since the entire being of the sea creature is water, so therefore the water and the sea creature are completely one. That is what the sea is about. Let's contrast that with the dry land. But creatures on dry land, they are a separate entity than the land. They're separated from their source of the life. Though everything was from the earth, everything came from the earth, everything came from the dry land, so that's its source. So how are you differentiating the fish, which its source is from the water, versus the creatures of dry land, which its source came out of the earth also? How's that different? So he says, that the earth is the root of the creatures of the dry land, still and all. If, for example, you stick any land creature into the ground, so then they will die. They will cease to be. It's just the opposite of fish. Fish, when it's in the sea, so that is the way it thrives, and it leaves the sea, it stops. Land creatures are just the opposite. You stick them on the ground, that's it. They stop existing. And they must be out of the earth. They need to be separated from the source of their life. Though there has to be breathing, and therefore breathing is also a connection with their life source. So why do you say they are separated from their life source? Like it says, all neshama should praise Yudke. Pirshu Chazal, the Chazal explained that neshama is also from the word neshima, which means breath. Shall call neshima that for every single breath, a person needs to praise Hashem, Mekor Chayusum, the source of their life. Mekal Makom still and all. It's not so recognizable that Hashem is the source of their life. Until it's imagined, it seems as if they are completely separated from the source of their life. The creatures of the world seems to be separated from the life force, which is Hashem, and has no connection with it. So therefore, spiritually as well, is the difference between the spiritual level of sea versus the spiritual level of land. So to spiritually, the creatures of the sea refers to such creatures that it's recognizable in them. They're bittul to godliness. Shemeir begilu yatzlam, it shines in a revealed way by them. Machenkim bruim should be abosh, as opposed to creatures of dry land. Koyala bruim, koyal nevraim she'enam b'teilim. It refers to creatures that are not nullified. Elon nirgoshim mitzius la'atzmam. They feel themselves as a separate entity. Kivin shloim meir etzlam alakus, because godliness is not something that shines by them in a revealed way. That's the idea of dry land spiritually. It indicates dryness of godly revelation. It shows that the godly revelation is by them in a dry state. Concerning this dry spiritual state, it says, Hashem praises and says, I have made the sand as the boundary for the sea. What's the indication of that? The sea shows as something that is wet, and we said sea shows on connection with godliness. Dry land, on the other hand, shows on disconnect. So we go from such an extreme that the sand, which is dry, becomes the thing that is the boundary for and puts limits on the sea. Top of page Yud Aleph. So it should be the concealment of the Creator from the creation. So there should be able to be the coming into being of the creations. That's why he had to make this concealment. That's why he had to make dry land to stop and not have the godliness revealed like it is in the sea spiritually. Yet all of this is only as a result of the chain order of descent when things are running in the normal way. But concerning the splitting of the sea, it says, he transformed the sea to dry land. The level of the sea comes down revealed in the dry land. This sea that was transformed and was revealed into land was in all the spiritual worlds, not just in the physical world down here, that there was a physical sea that now became transformed and revealed in the dry land, but also in the spiritual realms as well, and at all the spiritual levels. That's the idea why Hashem had all the waters in the world split, indicating that every single level of concealment, every single level of sea which shows on the godliness being concealed, became revealed. The Bechinas Yam Shebechol Darga Nimshcha Bechinas Yabosh Shabbat. Every level, its sea of that level came down into the dry land of that level. Mibchinas Yam HaKadmoini Kodem L'chol Hashtalshus, from the level of the early or prior Yam. Could also mean the Eastern Sea, but here we're talking about that it's Kodem L'chol Hashtalshus. It's the level of the sea in the concealment that was Kadmoin, that was previous to all revelations, to the whole chain order of descent. Va'ad lebchinas Yamsuf, until the level of the Yamsuf. Yamsuf Chassidus says, Suf is in the word Soif, end. Soif the Chol Dargin, the end of all levels. So in other words, from Kadmoin, from the earliest of levels, from the highest, most levels of concealment to the most lowest levels. Until it became revealed even before the first concealment, the earliest Yam, the Yam HaKadmoini B'chinas Chochma, the early Yam is brought down, it goes on Chochma. Chochma is also likened to a sea. It's called Yam HaChochma, the Sea of Chochma. Chochma, at least, being the first level of Seder Ishtalshlus, has a connection with the level of Malchus, the last level in Seder Ishtalshlus. But here, we're saying it's even higher than Yam HaKadmoini, during the splitting of the sea. It was a revelation of the concealment that's even higher than this. Second paragraph, line 15. This was in such a way that a maidservant saw on the sea what even the greatest of the Nevi'im, the greatest of the prophets, didn't see. Every single one would point with their finger and says, "This is my God, and I will beautify him." It says Zeh means when you point at something. Like it's brought down in Medrash, and Rashi brings it down that the children recognized Hashem and pointed at Hashem by Kriyas Yamsuf. So the Rebbe says, the uniqueness and novelty of this that took place by Kriyas Yamsuf was in two aspects. One aspect is the revelation was to every single one, even to a maidservant. Another novelty and uniqueness of this is that the revelation was with our sense of sight, physical sense of sight. Everybody was pointing with their finger. He was pointing with a physical finger. If it was an intellectual revelation, an emotional revelation, a spiritual revelation, there's nothing to point at. So therefore, if you're pointing with a physical finger, it's because Lefisha Ra, Ba'ain Hagashmi, he saw it with the physical eye. And this vision and this seeing was also by a maidservant. Like the Chazal say, that even a maidservant saw this. We will stop over here.